Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradari Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradari Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Jamuna Tira Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. Again, welcome everyone. Anyone who's joined in the last few moments. Remind me your name. Is it Eric?
Eric, yeah.
Eric, okay. And it's your very first time to a Bhakti temple. So warm welcome. So grateful to have you here, Eric.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So this song that we opened up with, Jaya Radha Madhava, it's described that it's a window into the spiritual world. So obviously that's a whole nother class of going over the meaning of the Sanskrit words that we're chanting in the song, but it describes kind of the soul's engagements in the spiritual world, the blissful activities that we're aspiring to purify ourselves in order to attain. So we are reading today from Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 2nd chapter, 9th verse. So the chapter prayers by the demigods. So I'll start with the Sanskrit and I'll share my screen. Ataham amshabhagena devakya putratam shubhe prapsyami tang yashodayam nanda patnyam bhavishyasi. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. O all auspicious Yoga Maya, I shall then appear with my 6 full opulences as the son of Devaki, and you will appear as the daughter of Mother Jashoda, the queen of Maharaj Nanda. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The word Angshabhagena is important in this verse. In Bhagavad Gita 10:42, the Lord says, Attava bahunaitena kim yatena tavarjuna vishtabhyaham idam kritsnam ekam shena stato jagat. But what need is there, Arjuna, for all this detailed knowledge? With a single fragment of myself, I pervade and support this entire universe. Everything is situated as a part of the Supreme Lord's potency. In regard to Lord Krishna's appearance in the womb of Devaki, Brahma played a part also because on the bank of the milk ocean, he requested the Supreme Personality of Godhead to appear. A part was also played by Baladev, the first expansion of Godhead. Similarly, Yogamaya, who appeared as the daughter of Mother Jashoda, also played a part. Thus, Jiva Tattva, Vishnu Tattva, and Shakti Tattva are all integrated with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And when Krishna appears, he appears with all his integrated parts. As explained in previous verses, Yogamaya was requested to attract Sankarshana, Baladev, from the womb of Devaki to the womb of Rohini. And this was a very heavy task for her. Yogamaya naturally could not see how it was possible for her to attract Sankarshana. Therefore, Krishna addressed her as Shubhe, auspicious, and said, be blessed, take power from me, and you will be able to do it. By the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, anyone can do anything. Did you guys catch that? I'll read that one more time. By the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, anyone can do anything. You guys believe it? Yes?
Why not?
Awesome. Why not, right? Anyone can do anything. For the Lord is present in everything, all things being his parts and parcels, Angshabhagena, and increasing or decreasing by his supreme will. Balaram was only 15 days older than Krishna. By the blessings of Krishna, Yogamaya became the daughter of Mother Jashoda, but by the supreme will, she was not able to enjoy the parental love of her father and mother. Krishna, however, although not actually born from the womb of Mother Jashoda, enjoyed the parental love of Mother Jashoda and Nanda. By the blessings of Krishna, Yogamaya was able to achieve the reputation of being the daughter of Mother Jashoda, who also became famous by the blessings of Krishna. Yashoda means one who gives fame. That is the end of the purport. So we'll start with some invocation mantras, prayers before we start our discussion. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshapari Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Lagayate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Bande Shri Guru Dinataranam. I offer my respects to Shri Guru, the deliverer of the most fallen, by whose mercy the dumb can speak eloquently and the blind, the lame can cross mountains. So before we start, I request all of you guys to give me any blessings or prayers from your heart that we can have a helpful, relevant, and inspiring discussion on this sacred Srimad Bhagavatam. So happy to be here with you all. So just to give very, very brief context to this verse and this purport or elaboration on the verse that we read this morning, we are reading from this massive wisdom text, the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is 18,000 verses, and we are somewhere towards the latter third or so of this work in the 10th canto out of 12 cantos. And we're specifically reading about Krishna, or God, coming to earth and manifesting himself in this material plane about 5,000 years ago, according to the Vedic tradition. So we're reading in this purport about Krishna taking birth in the womb of Devaki. Although God is the source of everything, that source from which everything takes birth, so God obviously can't take birth, but for the sake of Leela, this Sanskrit term for the sake of pastimes or loving exchanges with us, with souls, Krishna takes birth, and it appears externally like he's a regular person, although he's the supreme person. And so was there anything that stuck out particularly for you guys based on what we read so far in the purport? Just start right there, open it up. Feel free to just shout it.
The sentence that we read about.
Thank you. Yeah, same for me. I agree. So I'll read that one more time here in the purport. By the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, anyone can do anything, for the Lord is present in everything. So this is what we'll focus our discussion on. And particularly, there was also some reference to Yoga Maya, this Sanskrit term in this verse. And so there's a letter from Srila Prabhupada who translated and commented on this text, Srimad Bhagavatam, who brought us this wisdom. And he wrote a letter in the 60s where he gave a very nice kind of way of understanding what Yoga Maya means. So Srila Prabhupada wrote, Yoga Maya means the mercy of the Supreme Lord, which connects a devotee in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. And Mahamaya means the external potency of the Lord, which puts a conditioned soul into illusion that he will be happy by material adjustment. So basically this Sanskrit term Maya literally means that which is not, or you can translate it as illusion. And so in this description here, Srila Prabhupada broke down these two different Mayas. So one is Mahamaya, or material illusion, that energy which conditions us to lose touch with our actual spiritual alignment and true identity as souls in relationship with the Supreme Soul, with Krishna, the Super Soul. But then Yoga Maya, which this verse talks about, again, means the mercy of the Supreme Lord, which connects a devotee in transcendental loving service with God. And so we're going to talk about, I guess, yeah, you could say the theme of this class will be buying into Krishna's plan. How do we align ourselves with Yoga Maya, or that mercy of the Supreme, which empowers us to experience our real potential as parts and parcels of the Supreme, to have a loving relationship, a personal relationship. That's, to sum up the philosophy of Bhakti Yoga, of Krishna consciousness, in in one word, that's really it, is personalism, that God is a person, just like we're people, but God is a supreme person. His qualities are absolute. He's the source of all other qualities. And so the perfection of our potential is to establish a deeply personal, unique relationship with God. And in doing so and nourishing that relationship, then we can actually become empowered to nourish all of our other relationships with other souls, other living entities, and actually have something substantial to give and to offer, actually be experiencing real love, not a material perversion, which people use the guise of love, but really it's coming from some selfish motive. And yeah, so yesterday was the appearance or disappearance day of Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. Appearance day. So this great bhakti yogi who lived not so long ago, he left his body in 2005, I think. And he traveled and taught all over the world, just inspired thousands and thousands of people. And he had this series of books that he wrote called Spiritual Warrior. So I was thinking of that because yesterday we were remembering and celebrating his life and contributions. And I was thinking how it relates to the concepts in this verse of Yoga Maya, or divine mercy, and Maha Maya, the energy that bewilders us, that takes us out of the flow of mercy. And so Srila Prabhupada in the Bhagavad Gita, in a purport in the 9th chapter, he describes that this process of bhakti yoga, or devotional service, is more or less a declaration of war against Mahamaya, or against the illusory energy. And so, yeah, our process is all about becoming a spiritual warrior, and how to, again, buy into Krishna's plan for us, Krishna's will, that we attain the highest love, the highest perfection as souls. And so, yeah, we have a few different points that we will get into along this topic. So the first point that I had noted in terms of buying into Krishna's plan, how do we do that, is your intensity of purpose equals your success, or the level to which you can actually be aligned with Krishna's plan. So again, your intensity of purpose equals your success. We were just having 2 nights ago a Zoom Sangha, or gathering, with His Holiness Radhanath Swami, by whose vision this Bhakti Center exists and is running. Just great, great soul. And he was sharing with us all that the key to making spiritual advancement, or you could say the key to buying into Krishna's divine plan for us, is to make a conscious choice to grow in your spiritual life. So it's actually a choice, and it's something that has to be chosen again and again, not just once, but every single day. We have to commit and recommit to the process of doing the necessary work for spiritual growth, for developing a deeper and deeper relationship with God, with Krishna. And I was thinking, there's this idea that you hear a lot in kind of the current self-help books that are really popular, this idea that resources follow the commitment. It's not the other way around, right? In this material context, oftentimes the default mindset of people is, once I have the time, or once I have the money, then I'll do this thing that I really want to do, but only I have to get that first. So with that mindset, at least according to this kind of prevalent self-help philosophies, that you'll be waiting forever. you have to make the commitment and say, I am doing this. And then by that level of conviction, that decision, then the resources will follow. And so I was thinking how this principle relates to bhakti and the spiritual paradigm given in these Vedic wisdom literatures, in the sense of realization, which is kind of like a spiritual resource because it empowers us to go deeper and deeper. The resource of realization follows faith. So when we choose every day to show up with faith to the process, to our sadhana, our daily practices, and trust in the wisdom coming from Krishna through these sacred texts that we have access to, then realization will follow. But if we're sitting around and waiting for, okay, once I have realization and experience of really getting a taste for my nature, my identity as a soul, then I'll have firm faith, and we'll be waiting around. It won't come like that. It's even just philosophically, it reminds me of kind of like if you talk to some hardcore atheists, they'll say, okay, if God exists, prove it to me right now in 2 minutes. It's just completely irrational, because if God exists, then we're talking about the source of everything. And if you can just prove that there's a source of everything in 2 minutes, then that's not God. What value does that proof have? It's like, even, to I don't know, it's like if you want to work for a company in the material world that's a really powerful company, then you have to impress the managers through your interviews and everything, because there's hundreds of people that are applying for this prestigious company. So how would it make sense that to prove ourselves to God, or to prove that God exists and experience God, we could do it in 30 seconds, and we wouldn't need to open ourselves up to and please God in order to receive a position of elevation. So yeah, I just thought those were some interesting related points. So anyways, to just tie that up, this idea that the resources of realization by which we can advance come from our faith, that in order to actually experience God, we have to have faith. We have to, even hypothetical faith, that, okay, I don't know for sure because I haven't experienced, how can I know? But these books make sense, and I'm observing all of these great people around me that really seem like they're experiencing something deep, and I see it manifest through the qualities that they're developing and exhibiting in the way that they're living and their interactions. So on that basis, bhakti is really a spiritual science. It's not about blind faith, it's about rational faith, and science in the sense that it's systematic. We have practices laid out, it's verifiable. You can experience for yourself. It's self-evident if you're actually growing, if you're experiencing something higher or not. So again, this opening point is that your intensity of purpose equals your success. And so kind of the antithesis of this concept is being complacent in spiritual life and not having that intensity, that urgency, that drive and determination to really keep moving forward. So complacency will stunt the potential for growth. So I wanted to just open it up really briefly to ask all of you guys, so I can hopefully be fortified and inspired in my own spiritual life. What allows you to avoid complacency, and what helps you feel your purpose in bhakti being intensified, what enlivens you like that. So we'll start in the room if anyone wants to share just in brief. Belle, please.
Definitely for me, kirtan is what opened the portal, and the association of devotees is what has kept me coming back and squatting here and asking for devotees' mercy. Kirtan and association have definitely been the biggest component.
So kirtan, mantra meditation, and association, hanging out, spending time with people who are actually doing this work, dedicated to it, so that enlivens you, gives you a sense of purpose to commit yourself to bhakti. Awesome. Any one or two more brief? Emily?
Staying around people who are fired up and in a sense of urgency themselves.
Staying around people who are fired up and have that sense of intensity and urgency. Yeah, and I like that you use the specific term fire. Srila Prabhupada so often gave this analogy that if you put an iron rod in fire, for all practical purposes, it actually becomes fire because it gets so hot. So in the same way, if we keep ourselves in the flames by being near someone who's on fire with spiritual enthusiasm, then naturally, just by that contact, we'll experience it. Awesome. I was thinking one point for myself, something that helps me to avoid the trap of complacency, is writing about my experiences with my spiritual practice. Because otherwise I just observe so often the trick of the conditioned mind to kind of downplay things and downplay the depth and the joy of experiences that I've had in spiritual life, and upplay the glimmer and the attractiveness of all kinds of material engagements that we could commit ourselves to, that fall under the domain of Mahamaya, or the energy that bewilders us, puts us under illusion of our real nature. So journaling and writing down the reflections that are coming through my practice and through relationships and interacting with others, through kirtans, different feelings that I'm experiencing, just having this all solidified. There's something, so tangible when you write something down, it becomes solidified on the paper. And then you have that always to go back to when the conditioned mind is driving you towards complacency, like, I don't know, is it really worth it to like keep waking up early and taking all the trouble to chant Hare Krishna so many times a day and read these books, and sometimes they're not the most exciting and interesting. Then you can say, well, actually, mind, look at this here. Did you forget already? Look at this experience you had yesterday. Like, no, this is great. We're going to do this. So really helpful. And there's this one quote from this author, Viktor Frankl. A lot of devotees like his book. What is it? Man's Search for Meaning? That was called. About his experiences in the Holocaust camp during World War II, and he survived. And so he has this quote that nothing is more likely to help someone overcome and endure trouble than the consciousness of having a task in life. So just, again, hammering in this idea that your intensity of having a purpose, of having a task, some axiom to base everything on, is what empowers us to overcome and endure. And it really simplifies life, because then you have something to base all of your activities and your decisions and your relationships and your habits around. Okay, how does this align with my purpose? Will this bring me closer to that, or will it bring me further? And so in that way, it simplifies things, and we can, when challenges and obstacles come, we can introspect and reflect on how we can use them to, again, bring us closer to that purpose.
I want to say, I feel that
Alan, yeah.
being involved with distribution, talk about tangibly, you're out there feeding for the homeless people who need you, that really connects you with something that's something tangible. I mean, I've been involved with distribution for many, many years, but now I've found a way of bringing the spiritual and helping people together. So for me, that's the difference.
So thank you so much, Alan, for sharing that. Being involved with the distribution of prasadam, spiritualized food for many years now, right, is really that tangible sense of doing service for a higher purpose really enlivens the purpose. Thank you so much, Alan. And so, yeah, last note on this opening point, these ideas is, have you ever felt that you theoretically, you know your purpose, it's clear as day, but you feel like it's really hard? You like, I can't do it, it's so hard. I feel like that often. So there's this really relevant purport in the Bhagavad Gita that addresses this. So I'm going to post it here in the chat momentarily. 7 seconds or less, or your money back from this free class. Okay, here it is. So this is from the 3rd chapter, verse 31 of the Bhagavad Gita, the purport by Srila Prabhupada. He says, "But an ordinary man with firm faith in the internal injunctions of the Lord, even though unable to execute such orders, becomes liberated from the bondage of the law of karma. In the beginning of Krishna consciousness, one may not fully discharge the injunctions of the Lord, but because one is not resentful of this principle and works sincerely without consideration of defeat and hopelessness, he will surely be promoted to the stage of pure Krishna consciousness." Haribol. So this idea that even if our purpose is so clear, but we're not living up to it because we're conditioned for millions of lifetimes, traveling through universes as souls inhabiting different bodies. So if that conditioning holds us back, then even if we're not making the advancement right away that we think we should be, or that is really in line with our purpose, that if we're, in Prabhupada's words, if we're just not resentful of the principle, if we're not resentful of the highest purpose, and we work without consideration of defeat and hopelessness, then gradually we'll be empowered to live up to that standard. And so Srila Prabhupada, along this note, he gave this very nice description of how to pray that kind of encapsulates this mindset of not being resentful of the principle of the purpose, that instead of thinking, Krishna, I can't do this, this is too hard, these expectations are too high, you still feel yourself bereft and helpless, but you pray, Krishna, how will I do this? How will I do this? How will I do this? Those were Prabhupada's words. So that encapsulates the mindset that it's possible. Krishna, I know it's possible because you've given these instructions, these standards of practice of living in these shastras, these wisdom texts. So I know it's possible, but I can't conceive how I can live up to that. So please, how will I do this? How will I do this, Krishna? So these are some thoughts on intensifying our purpose to attain success in buying into Krishna's plan. So the second point I'll speak on briefly is the importance of humility, of practicing and cultivating humility to buy into Krishna's plan and experience his yoga maya, his mercy, which brings us closer to him. So one of my teachers just the other week, he was telling me that humility is the best defense against maya, mahamaya, illusion. And in fact, in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 13th chapter, verses 8 through 12, Krishna gives a list of, I believe it's 20 items of knowledge. He says that these things all constitute knowledge by which one makes advancement in consciousness. And the very first item on that list, it starts with amanitvam adambitvam. Sanskrit means humility and pridelessness. This is the beginning of all knowledge, is this state of humility. And knowledge is what breeds realization for the resources which drive us forward in Krishna consciousness. And so, yeah, humility, it could have infinitely long seminars just on this one point. It's such a deep topic, but I like the way that Deva Madhava Prabhu, this great devotee, breaks it down and describes it. And so humility, the word, the etymology, traces back to the Latin humus, which means the earth. So humility, it doesn't mean to be self-deprecating and just like, oh, I'm so terrible, I can't do anything. Humility means to be grounded, to be on earth, to be grounded in reality. And what's the reality? The reality is that we're very insignificant as souls. There's infinite souls. We're living in an infinite universe. We're all parts and parcels of Krishna's creation. It's just like compared to a drop from the ocean. That's what we're like as living entities. So in that sense, we're very small and insignificant. But at the same time, humility means to embrace our potential for significance. And that comes from plugging in to the source, to the divine plan. And I was thinking of, there's this analogy that Srila Prabhupada likes to give about a screw. And I was thinking of this recently because I've been working on cleaning up the 6th floor of the Bhakti Center, the men's ashram space, and just decluttering things that have gathered there through who knows how many years. And so I was finding a bunch of random screws just in corners and in drawers and stuff. And so I was thinking of this analogy. Srila Prabhupada says that a screw separated from the machine is useless. It's not serving any, it's just a screw. But when it's plugged into the machine, then it's inestimably valuable because it plays a role in keeping the machine together and functioning. So that's humility, is understanding that we're like a little screw. And if we're unplugged from the machine, from Krishna, then we are super insignificant, and that there's not scope or potential for us to really be empowered. But if we're plugged in to the whole, then we become significant because Krishna is significant, the machine by which all the parts are moving. And another aspect of humility is, Dayal Gauranga was mentioning this point in his class 2 days ago, is having a healthy fear of Mahamaya, or the Lord's potency or energy of bewilderment. And Prabhupada even said that the problem that my disciples have is they don't have enough fear. They're not sufficiently afraid of Maya. So it's important, an aspect of cultivating humility is to never underestimate the material energy's potential to bewilder us and throw us off of the track of bhakti. And yeah, I was hearing a class the other day, Ravindra Swarup Prabhu said that eternal vigilance is the price for liberation. Always being cautious and careful, having this healthy fear that, okay, Krishna, this illusion is really powerful. You got to help me. I'm afraid of getting caught up in it. So he said, eternal vigilance is the price of liberation. And he said that as soon as you think you're safe and protected and out of danger, then you're in grave danger from Maya. So this is what it means to be humble. And yeah, there's an ecstasy of insignificance that comes from humility. This is a phrase that Mother Vishaka, Prabhupada's disciple, coined. So again, just that analogy of the screw, that embracing our insignificance and understanding that we're very small, but if we plug ourselves in to that which is very big, the biggest, then we can actually serve a greater purpose. Then we experience ecstasy from our accepting our insignificance, living humility. So we'll wrap up.
Oh, I just didn't want to.
Sure, Alan, yeah.
The opposite of humility, having like a false ego.
Mhm.
That's probably one of the toughest things that even devotees, people who might give up money, material things, sex, but an ego is the thing that almost all of us have, even when we don't realize it at times. That's very difficult. And when you mentioned self-deprecating, that's like an ego in itself, because I know it seems like they call it oxymoron, but people who are proud of being humble, oh, I'm nothing, I don't really know very much. And that's an ego unto itself. And, you know, in the Western tradition, I mean, Jesus condemned the Pharisees. They were religious, they followed all the rules, but they had an ego of knocking others and despising others. And so that's one of the most difficult things to have, don't have that ego, as you say, have humility.
Great.
I really enjoyed the discussion here.
Oh, thank you, Alan. Thank you for contributing. Yeah, great point that Alan mentioned, that sometimes what might appear like humility is actually pride. Pride in one's own, like, oh, I'm so low. And that's a form of, self-absorption. And in that sense, pride, because humility means there's this phrase, not to think less of oneself, but to think of oneself less, because you're thinking of God, how to serve Krishna, how to serve others. And so, that self-deprecation, which oftentimes gets equated with humility, is actually a form of pride and self-indulgence. Great point. Thank you. So the third idea for how to be a spiritual warrior and embrace this battle against the illusory energy, buy into Krishna's plan, is opening our ears to hearing Krishna. And I was thinking, how can we be, because the idea is that Krishna lives within all of our hearts as the super soul. So if we can just hear Krishna within the heart, then we're guided at every single moment. But because we're still conditioned, I'm still conditioned, I speak for myself, then how do we hear Krishna's voice? Or in other words, how can one be true to oneself when one doesn't yet know one's true self? So this is where the importance of Shastra, these wisdom literatures, come into play, because that's a manifestation of Krishna's voice coming from his heart and his mind and giving us direction on how to hear him. So by embracing Shastra, Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, we are gradually guided to change our attitude and our behavior and our habits, and to mute the inner voices that are driven by conditionings, lust, greed, fear, anger, that muffle the sound of super soul within. So by embracing Shastra and sadhus, guru, advanced practitioners who we can tangibly perceive their spiritual depth, then that's how we open ourselves up to hearing Krishna's voice. And then I'll just end by sharing 2 Bhagavad Gita verses. We'll read the translations. And it's just on this note of hearing Krishna's voice. So this is 18th chapter, 57 and 58. In all activities, just depend upon me and work always under my protection. In such devotional service, be fully conscious of me. Text 58. If you become conscious of me, you will pass over all the obstacles of conditioned life by my grace. If, however, you do not work in such consciousness, but act through false ego, not hearing me, you will be lost. So this is Krishna's plan, is that all of us can pass over all the obstacles of conditioned life. How? By Krishna's grace. And how do we experience that? By becoming conscious of Krishna, by becoming Krishna conscious. And how do we become Krishna conscious? By hearing Krishna through embracing Shastra and hearing mantra, chanting Krishna's names, discussing with devotees, those who are on the path. And yeah, so that's, we can wrap up there. Those are my thoughts today for 3 points on becoming a spiritual warrior. And working to overcome illusion is cultivating an intensity of purpose, cultivating humility as our main defense strategy, and then opening ourselves up to hearing Krishna. And just last note, I was thinking, we can just imagine how much heart and soul Srila Prabhupada put into translating and giving us these Vedic scriptures, staying up all night, dictating, writing, researching. So if we can just muster a fraction of that intensity to study these books that he's given us, to embrace these gifts, that's how we begin to hear Krishna. So we'll end there. We'll open it up for any reflections or thoughts or questions. Really love to hear from you guys. So we'll start. Anyone here in the live audience?
I do. Yeah.
Emily?
One quick practical. You were reading a purport from a Bhagavad Gita verse under the one of the last points of intensity of purpose. What was that?
331.
Okay, so question in that report, something you mentioned as a takeaway is working without consideration of defeat. So in essence, bravery, and then later under humility, talking about having caution and diligence. How do you harmonize being brave and also having caution and diligence and some fear?
Great point. Okay, so Emily was referencing the purport to Bhagavad Gita 331, which we read. One of the ideas in there was working without consideration of defeat and hopelessness. And so your question was, how do we harmonize that consciousness with
also
with
having some
bravery?
diligence and
Okay.
fear a little bit.
So how?
Like you're not afraid of that.
Yeah, how to embrace that healthy fear of Maya and also embrace boldness and courage and yeah, intensity of purpose. Awesome question. Yeah, I think that fear in this sense of having a healthy fear of Maya is different from mundane fear. So in that sense, there's no discrepancy between being in that consciousness and being brave and unafraid to just dive in. Okay, Krishna, I don't know how I'm doing this, but how will I do? How will I do? You'll empower me somehow. I have faith. And so fear in the material sense, as Bhagavatam points out in 11th canto, Bhayam Dutya Viniveshatasyat, that this is the cause of all bewilderment, is disconnect from Krishna, which leads to material fear. And then we use fear as a coping strategy to gain some kind of benefit. Like, okay, I'm afraid of failing or making a mistake, so I'll hide behind my fear in order to not take responsibility for acting and making the necessary changes in my life that I know I need to. Or I'm afraid of rejection and being hurt, so I'm not going to speak assertively in order to try to keep peace in relationships and interactions. And so this healthy fear of Maya, instead of disempowering us through fortifying our false ego, it empowers us to take shelter of Krishna. Okay, Krishna, I'm afraid of your illusory energy. I'm afraid of Maya. So I'm coming to you for shelter. Yeah. Shikshastika, Prabhu, please.
Hare Krishna. Thank
Hare.
you. I just had a quick question. We're not the doer. So how can you have intensity of purpose if we're not the doer?
Great questions. I think, yeah, I guess real quick to wrap up my last thought on Emily's question about harmonizing those two factors is that material fear, we close down, and spiritual fear, this healthy fear of Maya, we open up to Krishna. And then, so Shastika Prabhu, thank you for this point about how do we embrace all of these ideas, intensity of purpose, with understanding that we're not the doer. I think this relates back to the verse from Bhagavad Gita 18th chapter 58, that if you become conscious of me, you'll pass over all the obstacles of conditioned life by my grace. If you do not work in such consciousness, but act through false ego, if you have this conception that you're the one doing all this, then you'll be lost. So in that way, we can embrace an intensity of purpose that, okay, I'm giving my full heart and soul to this process, to Krishna, and understanding that Krishna is any ability is Krishna, as he says in Bhagavad Gita, I am the ability in man. So in that sense, any result that we attain or don't attain, it's not by our doing. Everything is happening by the supreme will of Krishna. Let me know. Yeah, do you have any further thoughts? I'd love to hear on that point, Shikshastika Prabhu, and then we'll hear from Adi Purusha. Prabhu?
Oh, that's good. Thank you.
Sure. Adi Purusha? I'll mute myself.
I'd like to try to speak.
You made the point very clearly. That Prabhupada says, my disciples don't have a healthy respect for the power of the material energy, right? So that can be a problem if you just boldly, a tiny child who doesn't know how to navigate traffic in a traffic light and cross the street, that's foolish. They'll just run out in the street and be hurt. But if they understand there's danger here, therefore Prabhupada's name is given Abhay Charan Day. Fearless at the lotus feet of the Lord, like you so nicely explained. That the child holding on to the father's hand, with the father's increased ability to discern danger and how to navigate, holding on to the father's hand can easily cross the street with complete confidence. So like you were saying, if we're acting if this appreciation of my limited ability and the appreciation of the very real danger is clear, and it impels us to stay close to the spiritual master and Krishna. And everyone was saying, it's already been mentioned a few times, the association of devotees, looking for people who are fired up, my spiritual master. We stay close to the spiritual master. Prabhupada said, I'm never separated from my spiritual master. That's possible. It's not a matter of geographical proximity or time, but you can be there with your guru, with the instructions from scripture, and full faith. And who was saying that the other day? Was it Kastava Prabhu? Running with eyes closed and not stumbling. And Ananda Vihari Prabhu was saying, I'm holding hands with the devotees, and so even if my eyes are closed and I'm running, I'm fully confident that I'm not going to fall, because I'm supported and guided and assisted like that. So Krishna, how wonderful is Krishna that is providing us with that quality of association and his own personal grace.
Bava has her hand up.
All right. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Baba, please. No,
Andrea. Oh, Baba. Baba, go ahead and speak. You got the floor.
Hello? Hello?
We hear you.
Okay. So my question is how do we maintain a demeanor of positivity and love and hold it completely within our heart at the same time as we're surrounded sometimes by so much negativity and people trying to counteract that? And not even when it's directly directed at us, but when it's directed at people around us.
awesome question and point. Is the volume up?
Oh. Okay.
Okay. Oh, there we go. Thank you so much, Baba, for this really beautiful, relevant question. How do we maintain and embrace positivity and love when we're swarmed with negativity, even if it's not directly aimed at us, just being in the material world in a place like New York City, and yeah, if it's aimed at people around us. I would say, yeah, it really entails daily fortification. There's this idea that you shouldn't go grocery shopping when you're hungry. Anyone experience that? Because you'll buy all kinds of things that you realize later that, oh, I didn't actually need that. I was just kind of warped by my hunger when I was in the store. So in the same way, we need to daily fortify ourselves and bathe in the nectar of Krishna's holy names through chanting and hearing Krishna, through reading, associating with sadhus, in order to have some sense of fullness. And in that way, we won't be hungry and we won't be susceptible to embracing as much of the negativity that we may be subjected to around us. It's like if we're already full with Krishna, then I don't have any space to take it in. I'm already full. But yeah, it's a difficult dynamic for sure. I appreciate you bringing that point up.
I remember Damodara Swami Maharaj once said something to this effect: don't fight the darkness, just light a candle, for goodness sake. Don't concentrate on the darkness. All right? That's to Bhava's Prabhu's question.
Thank you so much for that addition. And then the Bihari Prabhu. Just light a candle, focus on the light. Beautiful. So 8 o'clock, I think this is a natural point to wrap up. I'm so honored and grateful to be here with all of you for this opportunity to try to purify myself and speak. And thank you so much. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. All glories to the Son of the Lord.
Dana Kriya Prabhu ki jai.
Hare
Hare Krishna. Beautiful class. So many takeaways. Excellent. 5-star review. Thank you very much. Dana Kriya Prabhu. Hare Krishna, everybody. Thank you for joining, for your questions, for your cameras, keeping on. And see you again tomorrow. Hari Bol.